Welcome to the High Impact Man podcast. High impact men from across the nation sharing their stories of inspiration, encouragement, and hope.
Gosh, seek transformational relationships.
Now, what you're hearing from the culture is not right. Pick up the six, you know what I mean? But you never know who your six sometimes is.
Stop being less.
To help others become the virtuous leaders they're called to be and that our nation desperately needs.
And we're off and running with another episode of the High Impact Man podcast. Happy New Year to all you listeners out there. 2025 may be the greatest year that you've ever had. And you know what? You have a large part in making that happen. Your attitude, the way you approach things, who knows what's ahead of us? We don't know. Only the Lord knows. But one thing I know is we are flipping the script today. All right, Dial Up and I usually bring men on to tell their stories, to motivate, inspire, and encourage men to be more virtuous leaders out there and to just go out and get after it. And we enjoy doing that. That's the mission of the High Impact Man podcast. But our man, Funny Car, who is a constant listener to us, he's a dedicated listener to High Impact Man podcast, and I think he's unofficially the guy who's recommended the most men to us. I'm not sure. Rep Sleepy's got quite a few too, but pretty darn close. If not the most, he's the second most, but I think he might have the most. But anyway, he texted us, I don't know, what was it, about 2 weeks ago? He said, hey, I got an idea. How about I come on and interview you two guys? You guys get to tell your story. And, you know, I'm kind of shy, I'm kind of bashful, I'm kind of introverted, so I didn't know if I really wanted to do it. But we're going to give it a shot. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Nevin Gorky. I'm known as Defib to the guys at F3. Dial Up, my co-host, is next to me. His real name is Troy Klinger. And Mr. Funny Car is now the host, Bill Pollard. A lot of you guys may or may not know him. He was a guest on our show. I don't even know what episode it was. I should have looked it up before we started, but
early.
It's like
very early on.
The first 10 or 15, I think.
Yeah. He's a man who's faced some adversity, had heart surgery, and now he's killing again after like multiple GTEs a year and that kind of thing.
Yeah. He's out there everywhere too. He's out on national Slack channel posting stuff. He said he's got the LinkedIn page that he runs for F3 Nation. He always calls. Well, he doesn't always call in. He calls in a lot of times.
Frequent caller to the COT.
To the COT podcast. So he is out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And a former basketball player, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Actually, next week I'm playing in a 40 and over 3-on-3 basketball league.
Oh boy! All right,
that?
Good for you, man.
Yeah.
Tell me when they got the 60 and over multiple back surgery 3-on-3. Maybe I'll enter that one. The guys who can't bend over anymore. All right. So I think the only other thing I can say is I always like to say when we're recording this to give you a sort of a frame of reference. This is December 30th. So we got this is the evening of December 30th. So tomorrow will be New Year's Eve. So that kind of gives you where we're coming from here. And the Nittany Lions are obviously going to win tomorrow against Boise State. We're looking forward to that. I probably shouldn't have said that. My Eagles, baby. My Eagles, baby. Come on. One more game left.
By the time this drops,
yeah,
the Penn State Nittany Lions, quite frankly, might be already qualified then for the national championship game, right?
Yeah, we'll see. We can only hope. We can only hope.
Yes. Let's stay confident.
Absolutely.
And yes, your Eagles are playing well.
That's right. Now, I got to ask this question before we go any further.
It's probably the same question I'm going to ask you.
Yes, I'm sure it is. Would you play him or not?
Would you let Saquon go for the record?
Yeah, would you play him or not? Funny Car, what do you think? You know what we're talking about?
Yeah, I'm a big Washington fan, so.
All right, that's the end of this podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
That's a subtle dig from last week's game.
I really don't, I'll let you Eagles guys duke it out.
All right. Well, if you were the coach, Dial Up. You're the coach. What are you going to do?
So here's
the game means nothing in regard to the playoff standing.
That is true. I'm going to say you rest him, and here's my theory on why is in the same number of games. Truly, him and Eric Dickerson are currently at the same number of games to get to where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
So even if he beats the record, the regular season record, he will have had one more game to do it.
Yeah.
Which I think is a significant unfair advantage. And so out of respect for Eric Dickerson doing it in one less game than what Saquon would have the opportunity to break the record in.
Do you know who had the record before Eric Dickerson?
I think you said him. Who had it before Eric Dickerson? I would probably guess Walter Payton, or
Do
maybe
you know that before Eric Dickerson did it in 16 games, some guy had the record for 14 games?
Really?
Yeah, so should Eric Dickerson's record count?
Yeah. No, I don't know. You're always chasing it. Now they're talking about adding 2 more weeks to the NFL season.
I know. But you know what? 10 years from now, no one's going to know how many games it was. They're just going to say
Yeah.
Saquon Barkley.
I would like to think that I might have qualified for the Olympic trials in the marathon had I had the super shoes and the nutrition and rehydration and training science that the marathoners of today have.
Yeah, I don't know. You're a pretty darn good runner, buddy. So I don't know.
No, we just had that discussion today. Pong asked, like, how fast do you think you could go if you had current day training standards, super shoes, hydration, fueling, and I don't know.
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
I don't know. But you know what? You were playing with a level playing field back then, so
that is true.
Probably not.
Yeah.
So who knows? I don't know. I know I wouldn't qualify for anything. So no matter what we do. So all right, funny car. Enough of that nonsense. Take it away, brother.
You're in control, brother.
I am not Nevin Gorky or Troy Klinger. I'm Bill Funny Car from F3 Hampton Road 61. And I've been a loyal listener of this HIM podcast, High Impact Man podcast, probably in early days. I think, Defib, I heard you on Bones' podcast.
Yeah.
To tell him about your hot story, and that's how we connected.
Yeah.
I think that's right. I can't remember. But, y'all do, I think you've done 145 episodes, if I looked at the chart right. And y'all have done a great job interviewing mostly the men of F3. You've had a few non-F3 guys in there. They're high-impact men. They just weren't F3 high-impact man. And, now you're part of the F3 official podcast group with COT and Bones. And, you just do a great job letting the guys share their stories. And, when I listen to those stories, they impact me. I listen to these guys. And I felt like we need to listen to you two because you have a lot to offer. So before we get started, I just want to say that in full disclosure, I'm not a professional podcast interviewer. I'll modify as needed, and you both are participating in this podcast at your own accord. So we'll take it from there.
All right.
So let's begin, and D-Phil, we'll start with you. Let's begin with your F3 story. When you started, where you first posted, who chased you, and how you got your F3 name.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been living in Danville, Pennsylvania since 1991. But 8 years ago, I guess it was 9 years ago, I just turned 50. September 4th was my birthday. And my wife and I had decided to move to Florida. So people have heard this story before. Some people have. We moved to Lakewood Ranch, which is an area near Sarasota. Our address was actually Bradenton, but we got down there, didn't know anybody. And I don't know, maybe I could talk about this later, but this was, we moved down there 13 days after I had a heart attack and an emergency stent placed. And so I was kind of down, I leaving all my friends and family. It's just my wife and I, and my wife noticed that. So she saw, I'm never going to remember. I always say it's Facebook, but it wasn't a Facebook page. I think it was a Nextdoor app or something like that at Lakewood Ranch.
Neighborly or neighborhood or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that. They in Lakewood Ranch they had an advertisement for F3. So Bing, our man Dave Kelly down in Sarasota, he had started the Suncoast region. It started with one AO in Lakewood Ranch. So it wasn't a region yet, and it was Saturday mornings, and they had been up and running for a few weeks. And when my wife saw the ad, so she EH'd me. She said, "You need to go to this. You like working out, sports, all this stuff, and you can meet some guys and all that." So that's how I started. I started attending the original Saturday morning beatdowns at the original AO down in the Suncoast in Lakewood Ranch. And I remember posting to the first beatdown, and I thought I had recovered from my heart attack, but not quite. I hadn't quite recovered all the way yet.
How long ago had you had the stents before you went to the workout?
Yeah, so I had the stent put in October, and I think I attended, Bing knows, I think I attended the first workout in like May.
Okay.
I'm not sure, somewhere around there, something like that. And so it was maybe not quite 6 months after the heart attack. So, and I was fat, I didn't think I was really fat, but I was more fat than I thought I was. And so I was weighing about 230 pounds. And anyway, I showed up and I got my butt kicked. Drake, a guy down there named Drake, he queued, and I remember I brought this back to our region. We did part of the warm-up, part of the warm-a-rama, the Circle of Pain. We did play Thunderstruck. You got to do burpee every time you hear thunder, and I did not come close to getting through that. And I thought, holy cow, I'm really out of shape. But what was really cool was part of the workout was a partner part of it. You get a partner, and one guy did whatever. You say you got to do 200 Merkins between you, and one guy was doing the Merkins, the other guy was running back and forth and that kind of thing. And Bing came up to me and said, "I'll be your partner." And that's when I first met Bing, and it meant a lot to me, the encouragement that the guys gave me and that kind of stuff. The Suncoast region grew after that. Obviously, they got multiple AOs at the time. They had started, I think, a Tuesday or something like that, early morning beat down, but I couldn't make it because it took me about an hour to drive to work, and I started work at 6:30. So I was leaving the house about 5:30. Anyway, that's how I started. My first beat down, I got my name because you go in the middle, and they had a lot of guys there. It was like 30 guys or something like that, and they tell me about yourself. I'm a physician assistant. I work in heart surgery. Hey, what's that thing they shock people with? I said defibrillator, and Drake said defib, and I said, yeah, defib. It took like 10 seconds. So that's how I got my name. They since had a Defib 2.0, younger guy who came after I left. And funny enough, we share the same birthday, which is kind of weird. But anyway, we had him on our podcast. So you all look up Defib 2.0. He's a nurse down at Sarasota Memorial Hospital. That's where I worked as a PA. But that's my F3 origin story. We left there after about a year, so about 6 months, maybe 5 months or something like that after I started F3. Moved back here, and a couple years later, I decided I got to get back in F3 again, so I planted the shovel flag here in Danville.
How many years, before I get to Dial Up, how many years was it when you moved till you started F3?
Yeah, good question. I was 51 when I got back here. We're going to celebrate our 4th year anniversary in May, so that makes it about, what was it, about, so I was probably 55. So probably, I thought it was 2 years. Maybe it was 3 years after we moved back here. Something like that, like 2 or 3 years after. I came back here and I had started. Yeah, so I came back here. I had started a men's group that met to study a book, study God's Word, and on Saturday mornings. And it was still going strong when I came back. So I took over leading that again. And our pastor asked me to ramp up the men's ministry. So I started a men's ministry on Tuesday nights, called it The Forge. And I that's when I stumbled upon Free to Lead. The book, and I read that, and that really spoke to my heart as a man again, got me kind of fired up, and I realized I started using some examples from that for the Forge meeting with the men, and I thought, man, I gotta get back into F3 again. The only way I'm going to do it is if I start it, and other men need it, and so that's what happened.
Good. And we're going to come back to starting the region and how y'all grew and how your region's unique. But let's go to Dial Up and same question. When did you first post? Who EA'd you? How'd you get your F3 name? The routine.
Yeah. Hey, and first, I looked it up. You were the 9th episode.
9th episode. Wow.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to hear,
I remember y'all weren't even asking a lot of the questions in that episode.
No, we've evolved.
We were still figuring things out. So anyway, yeah. So if you want to hear Funny Car's story, go out, check out episode 9 of the High Impact Man podcast, and you'll get to hear Funny Car's story directly from the horse's mouth, so to speak. The Funny Car's
there
mouth.
You go.
Oh,
yeah.
So anyway, yeah. So Defib just kind of shared his story, and I have to tell you that we tried to tell Defib that it was a horrible idea to move to Florida. There were a lot of signs.
Were y'all friends before you moved?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been.
Yeah. We'll come back to your friendship before that, after that.
Sure.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, we've been friends for quite a while. Right. So anyway, we tried to convince Defib not to move, and there was a lot of signs that told him that he shouldn't go to Florida. But the one good thing that happened out of the whole thing is he found F3. He learned about F3 down there, and as he already said, when he came back here, he spent some time getting a men's ministry called The Forge started at our church, and he had done some other men's ministry that I was part of prior to that. But I remember him calling me on one of his long rides in the car, either to or from work, when he sat in traffic a long time, which was one of the reasons we told him he shouldn't go to Florida. But he missed us. He was lonely, and he was checking in with his guys back home, and he was telling me about this F3 thing that he had started and how excited he was about it, and like how it really connected with him. And so that was the first he had told me about it. And I didn't give much thought to it at that time. But, once he got back here and things got rolling with the other men's ministry, he's like, let's do this and let's get this started. And so he rounded up, I think there were four of us, right? Me, you, Twinkle Toes, and Porkies, I think were the
Three Pac, you, Porkies, and Twinkle Toes.
Yeah, that's right. So so we're kind of like the redwoods for our region. And my post with F3 kind of started unofficially because we were ready to launch, and COVID hit, and so we were posting remotely, where the five of us were just kind of sending out workouts in a text string, like, hey, I got the cue, here's the workout, go do it. And then we would post a little video checking in afterwards, telling, kind of sharing, hey, we did it, and it sucked most times. And then eventually we started meeting in person. I think you and Twinkle Toes and Porkies, you guys went and posted with the guys down in the Allentown, Lehigh Valley area. You got your names down there. I couldn't go for some reason, soccer tournament, track meet, I don't remember what it was, but I started posting with the guys here. We didn't give any names or anything until we actually started meeting in person. So when May of 2020 rolled around, we said, hey, time to start getting together in person and not do this remote stuff. And so that was my first post with the guys. And I was expecting, they knew that I used to run and do a lot of stuff like that. So I was expecting something like Forrest Gump or something along those lines. But I'm an older guy. I switched to my background's as a clinical exercise physiologist. I have a master's degree with that. And I worked in the clinical setting for about 10 years at Geisinger, the local hospital. And so I was a little older and I switched over to IT. And now I'm a relatively old guy in the IT department here. And so old IT, the term came to dial up. So I was kind of an old IT term, basically. I like to think of it now as I can dial up a pretty tough beatdown for the guys.
You don't have, I would have said you had an AOL email address, but
that's Defib. He's got
it works. Okay, it works.
Well, you're talking about COVID. So when y'all launched Defib, was anyone was Bing or anyone from F3 Nation helping you at that time, or did you just pretty much do this on your own?
Yeah, no. So I knew I had to put together an SLT. So I reached out to a number of different guys, and some of the guys just weren't interested. But Dial Up was on board right away, and three other guys that basically said yes right away. And so that was my SLT. But I knew I needed help. I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I read Free to Lead, and I was involved a little bit down in Florida, but I still wasn't totally familiar with the culture and all that. And so I called Bing. I knew him, so I called Bing, and he helped me a lot. He was kind of my mentor in planting the shovel flag. But at the time, F3 also had a mustard seed program.
Yeah, that's right.
And we would have Zoom calls from guys across the country, part of the mustard seed program. And I don't even remember who led that. One of the experienced guys from F3 was leading the mustard seed calls. So bouncing off ideas off guys and from other areas that are planting shovel flags, and so that was helpful. Now I think the sectors do that. It falls on the sector.
There's another name besides mustard seeds too, but I can't remember what that terminology was. So.
It wasn't. That was the program where guys actually fanned out from one of the existing regions and would kind of.
But that was before this. That was before the mustard seed thing. You're right, Dial Up. But before
Troubadours, is that it?
Well, so the Troubadour program was somebody could come and help you out, and we did that. Right. So Banjo came up from Carpex. That's how we met Banjo. I reached out and got a Troubadour, and he came up, and I think it was about 3 or 4 months after we had started. So we were already up and rolling a little bit, and he came up and spent Friday night. We had a dinner with Banjo for whoever can make it, and then he queued on Saturday, and then we had coffee tea afterwards with him and that kind of stuff. And of course, he stayed with me and my family, so I talked to him about it and all that. So all those things together, it was Bing, it was mustard seed guys, and it was the Troubadour system with Banjo, and we developed a cool relationship with Banjo through that. They don't have the Troubadour program any longer. Again, it falls to the sector queues, I think.
Yeah, you talk about COVID, and I don't know, I can't remember if F3 had an official stance or not, but I know a lot of regions did what y'all did, and maybe Zoom workouts or shared stuff.
Yeah.
I know with us, we never stopped meeting. We just made sure we stayed 10 feet apart, and we had more than 10 packs show up. We would split off. So whoever was a queue had to bring an extra winky in case you needed to spin off. And we grew like crazy during COVID because, guys didn't have anywhere to go.
Yeah, and they were off of work, right?
Yeah. We're
No,
talking
or at
about,
home.
talk a little about y'all's region because you're all sort of, it's not like you're in a big populated area, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
So give us a little bit of background on your region and pronounce it again. It's the
F3 Susquehanna Valley.
Susquehanna Valley.
Susquehanna Valley, yeah. So there's the Susquehanna River, which there's a west branch and a north branch of the river. It merges just south of where we're located and then flows all the way down to the Chesapeake Bay. And so the Susquehanna Valley kind of encompasses a large area. We started out our region, we were called F3 Iron because Danville's an iron town. But when we were starting to kind of spread a little bit to we were trying to get an AO launched in a neighboring town. And we're a little different, like a lot of the more metropolitan areas that have F3, right? It's kind of a different part of a neighborhood that has a different AO. For us, it's truly a different town, like up the road a ways, as we would say. So we kind of changed our name to F3 Susquehanna Valley to kind of be a little broader term from a regional perspective. Our region, I think, is unique because of that. Like we're a lot of small pockets of communities, a lot of little classic small town USA. Danville's a decent sized town because we have a major medical center here, which is really unheard of. Like it's mind boggling to a lot of folks that come to the Danville area to see such a huge medical center in such a rural community that we have here. But yeah, so we're basically just kind of a rural region, lots of little small towns, all connected by 10 or 15 minutes of travel between each town. And our big challenge here has been, we've got a good core group of guys that attend from Danville. There's many more guys that we could reach right here within our local community. We're trying to get things spread out now to those local towns. We had an AO up in Bloomsburg for a while, which is 15 minutes away from us. That kind of fell apart when kind of some of the leadership had stepped away. We got Wonder Pickle, who's launched a region in the Northumberland Sunbury area, which is about 20 minutes kind of downriver from us. He's got that thing taken off. He's got 5 or 6 guys showing up down there 2 days a week. So we're hoping we got some momentum going here now that, now we start kind of sprinkling AOs across all these little local towns that we got that are all, like I said, interconnected by, 15 or 20 minutes of travel.
How many AOs do you have? How many AOs do you have? And do you have one every day?
Yeah. Defib, you want to take this one?
Sure. So in the Danville area, we have an AO Monday through Saturday. On Saturday we have 2, and they're back to back at the same site. So the first one is a run. We call it Trailblazer. So you just meet at what we call the Big Mill, which is the field behind the local middle school. And the guys they pick their route and run it. The slower guys get a little over 3 miles. The faster guys could get 4.5 or so. Of course, close to 5.
Is that when Dial Up runs over the bridge and leaves you behind?
Oh yeah, you remember that? Yeah, he mutinied on me. Yep, he led the mutiny.
We didn't just leave him behind.
I'm still salty.
We just left him.
Yep, they just disappeared. Okay, they don't like running back and forth across the bridge. Apparently, runners don't like that.
Right. Like you've got all these great little side roads and streets and so many places to run. Like what runner in their right mind wants to run back and forth on?
Well, my idea was all the slow guys could be, we could all be together.
What will you turn? Will you turn back and forth?
Yeah, I know.
And for the record, anyway, we were not the first mutineers. Yeah. Someone else mutineered before Peloton and I did.
BG's doesn't count.
No, did he? Someone else, I think.
No, you group of guys just disappeared. Foreclosure, we were the second
one. I think Foreclosure mutineered first, and then Peloton and I were like.
Anyway, Trailblazer run 5:45 to 6:30, and then 6:30 we have our Iron Eagle. It's a boot camp beatdown. So altogether, that's 6 workouts. So there's 1 Monday through Saturday, 2 on Saturdays. The AO that Dial Up mentioned down in Northumberland. They started on Thursday mornings. Now they want Tuesday mornings. So you have an option on Tuesday and Thursday to go to a 5 a.m. beat down in Danville, or you could go down to a 6 o'clock beat down in Northumberland. You could do both if you could drive real fast. It takes about a half an hour to get there.
Do a lot of the guys who come to Trailblazer stay for the second workout?
I'd say probably more than half usually.
Yeah, I agree.
Trailblazer, what do you guys average at Trailblazer? Like 3 to 5 guys or something, 4 to 6 guys?
I think the stats today. I just sent those out today. Stats for the year, and I think they're averaging 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Saturday we had I think half the guys. I think I showed up for Trailblazer, believe it or not, this week. I think we had 4 out of 6 stayed for Iron Eagle. We had like 13 at Iron Eagle, something like that.
So how often are each of you posting during the week?
Yeah, Dial Up, you go first.
Yeah, I generally try and hit Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and like Saturdays, I generally try and do Trailblazers first, the run first, and then stay for the boot camp. It gets a little hit and miss for me, just like fall once my son, my daughter's now since graduated, but my kids run track and cross country, so once they kind of get in season, a lot of times I'm like having to sneak out early or maybe not stay for the boot camp to try and get to their meets, depending on what time they're starting. But yeah, so I would say on average, I get to like 4 of the workouts a week. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays, even though we have a 5 o'clock AO, you can call me a wimp, wuss, whatever you want to call me. That 5 a.m. is tough, dude. That half an hour difference, I show up pretty much every Tuesday and Thursday at 5:30. We kind of have like an off the books run, Peloton and solo. The 3 of us just get together. It's kind of like our own little shield lock run that we do. That's again off the books and just kind of the 3 of us. And anybody else that would want to show up is certainly welcome. But we run those other 2 days a week.
How about you, Defib? How often are you posting?
Yeah, so mine posting varies depending on my work schedule because my work schedule changes every week. So some weeks I have to be in the hospital about 6:15 or so, and so the 5:45 beatdown I just can't do. Mm-hmm. I work some weekends, so when I'm working the weekend, I can't show up for the Saturday beatdowns. But the flip side of that is there are weeks where I go in later. There's 2 different weeks during our 9-week schedule that I go in later, so I'm able to show up for the beatdown. So I what did I have? 120 some posts for this year. I think I had 120 some posts this year. So I show up when I can. The 5 a.m. ones are tough, but the Tuesday 5 a.m. is a run. And since my last back operation, I've stopped running a lot of distance. Although I showed up for Trailblazer and held myself to 2 miles. But so it's I ride the Peloton bike at home for cardio, and then the boot camp stuff. So it's better for me to just ride the bike than to show up and run and hurt my back. So anyway. That's a little bit of an excuse for not showing up for the 5 a.m. ones, but that's basically it for me. It's completely variable on my schedule, so I don't divide 100. What am I right? 120 some.
120. You are 3 shy of your record post in a year, which was last year.
Oh, there you go. So 120.
What do y'all use to track all this?
A good old Google Doc.
Okay. We're doing a spreadsheet.
Yeah, we looked at using Pax Miner, Pax Tracker, like one of those apps that are out there that'll go out there and get the data for us. But honestly, we're small enough. I post enough. I see the backblast. I hop into the Google Sheet pretty much every day. Boom, boom, boom. Give everybody credit, and we're done.
Yeah, we use this program called Airtable. So each AOQ puts in who shows up, and it shows you has every PAX, how many workouts, how many Qs. So that's how we use it. I know they're
he's called Dial Up, not 5G.
Yeah.
Airtable.
I'm gonna come back and have y'all tell us about little Defib and little Dial Up. But before I get there, you talked about you were friends before you moved to Florida. So let's start with how did this friendship start between you two?
Yeah, sure. It's okay, Dial Up. I'll talk about it first because your recollection may be better than mine. But so I've known of Dial Up for a long time. So even even in the early days of my career, you were working in cardiac rehab, and so you were on the same floor as us in our clinic. We weren't, close friends then, but I knew him. At some point, you guys came to your family came to our church. I think that's when our friendships blossomed more. So I see, he just left us, just completely left us. Doesn't see, this is how this goes, funny car. Yeah. No, I'm kidding. So Dial Up, am I right? When you guys came to the church, that's basically when we first really started.
I'll be back in 1 second. My thing's not charging. I got to get my laptop cord charging.
There he goes.
Here.
All right.
I'll be right back. I'm sorry.
Don't worry. I'll carry it. I'll carry the load, buddy. So, anyway,
tell the stuff you don't want to say in front of him. Too.
Right. That's right. So I thought he was he was a complete dork and a complete nerd, So anyway, a couple things happened. One is,
sorry for him.
I felt sorry for him. He needed a friend. So, I don't even know when that was, to be honest. He may know it better than I was, but it was quite a while ago. And then he and his wife were coming to a Sunday school class at our church that I taught. It was an adult Sunday school class that I taught for over 20 years. And they started coming to that class. So that I got closer to him then. And then through sports, we drew near too, because, he was his kids were involved in soccer, and I was coaching soccer. I coached my daughter's club team, and then I picked up a boys team, and his son was on a team that I started, and so I was coaching his son. I asked him to be an assistant coach with me, and so we coached together. Actually, in the Sunday school class, he was a substitute teacher, so he would share some of the teaching duties. Eventually, I stepped down as the lead teacher of that Sunday school class and asked him to take over. Much as I stepped down from the boys' soccer team I was coaching, asked him to take over. And and so, he keeps telling me that, I rope him into everything. So I started F3, I roped him into that. I was Nantan to start. Now he's Nantan. Right. And this is like the Defib Dial Up saga. So, and then the podcast, I thought we could get to how we started the podcast, but I immediately thought I need a co-host. So I'm going to ask Dial Up. So there he is. So anyway, I don't even know when that started. I'm going to say at least 20 some years ago that we first really became friends. And then we just drew closer as, time went on, sharing the same interests and, that kind of thing.
It looks like we've lost him. I guess he's going to join back up.
Yeah, he's struggling with internet issues or something at his house. I don't know, but yeah, carry on.
We'll continue on if we need to do any technical work. We can do that. But so you were how long were you Nantan? How long were you Nantan?
So I planted the shovel flag in 2020, and I handed it off to Dial Up. So I was a Nantan for 3 years.
Oh, okay.
And so this is our 5th anniversary coming up, I guess. So I handed it off to him after 3 years, and that's an interesting topic in and of itself. We're a small region. None of the packs would have cared if I stayed on as Nantan. At least I don't think they would have. But the whole purpose of F3 is leadership development, and I thought, well, I got to give the next guy a chance. So I tried to, Dial Up was along for the ride the whole way, so I didn't have to do much like special mentoring or anything like that. So he was a natural choice to be the next Nantan, because he posts more often than anybody else. See, he and another guy, Toe Mater, those two guys are 10 posts apart for the all-time most posts that are for F3 Susquehanna Valley. So he's there most of the time. He's incredibly fit, and he's a creative guy. But most of all, and most importantly, he cares for the guys. And so, because of that, he was that natural choice to be the next Nantan. So after 3 years, I stepped down. So he'll be Nantan. This May will be 2 years.
Yeah, you're right about, we're a leadership group. We say this guy's a workout group, but, you have guys come in who are strong leaders, but you see guys who really don't have leadership skills, and you see them develop those skills, through F3. That's why, I'm sort of active on LinkedIn with F3, because I feel like we're a networking group too.
Yeah.
Who you going to call if you need something? I'd rather go to a guy in F3 because I know he's going to have good values, good work ethic, and that's the men you're dealing with. So Dial Up Defib said you didn't have any friends, no one liked you,
I heard
and he sort of want to reach out to you and help you out a little
I heard
bit.
some reference to that, yeah. And I am on a streak of having technical difficulties. And tonight I had to use my son's laptop here for this episode, and I thought I was plugged in, and it went dead. And so I think it's kept recording while his laptop went dead for you guys. Did it look like?
It looked like it did.
Okay,
Yeah.
now I think we have
So-
now we have a second recording going. So Spielberg will have.
So what do you think? Did you hear what I said? I said it's been probably over 20 years since we've been
right,
friends.
Yeah, and I didn't get to hear everything that you said, but right, our first connection would have been when I was in cardiac rehab,
Right.
doing cardiac rehab stuff, and you were a PA. One thing I'll tell you, the one of the coolest things I remember about one of my first interactions with you is I had a guy that came in post surgery and was like short of breath, and I listened to his lungs and didn't hear many breath sounds, and so I'm like, I bet you this guy's got a pleural effusion. And I called you, and you came up and you listened to his lungs, and you get out this bag and a needle, and you like tapped him right there in our little office and drained out what looked like about two 2-liter bottles of Mountain Dew. That's what it looked like coming out of this guy's lung. And I was just like, that was the first I'd ever seen a pleural effusion in person, and I was like, holy cow, like no wonder the dude couldn't breathe. Like that was a lot of fluid, and it looked like Mountain Dew, right? Coming out. So that was like one of our first interactions. And then, I think I heard you mention it. Deneen and I started attending church out at First Baptist. We were at another church here in the community first, and came out to First Baptist, got to know you there, started attending your Sunday school class. We ended up coaching soccer together. You probably shared that.
I did, you taking over coaching.
Yeah.
Up 3 and so.
Yeah.
Well, let's do
the
this.
The joke is always Defib starts something and then I get brought along for the ride. Is usually what happens.
Finish it. Yeah. Well, let's start. Let's go spend a few minutes with each of y'all and tell us. Now, we'll start with you, Dial Up. Tell us about what was it like growing up as little Dial Up, and what was it like growing up, your family life, where you went to school and how you got into your vocation.
Sure. So I grew up in a small town, Center Hall, Pennsylvania. So like up in the shadows of Happy Valley. Again, go Nittany Lions. My parents divorced at a young age. I was an unplanned pregnancy of that era. But my mom was like 16 when she had me. Dad was 17. And they back then you got married because that's what you do, right? And they gave it a whirl. It didn't work. Anyway, divorced when I was about 6 months old. So grew up with my mom. My parents had a great civil relationship. It was just one of those things, like they just knew they were too young. Marriage was not going to be something they were going to do just to stay married. So grew up, in a single parent house. Spent the weekends driving, going up and spending weekends at Dad's every other weekend. Not a whole lot. My mom managed later on when I was older, like managed a bakery and a deli at one of the grocery stores. So not a lot of money growing up, but never. Some people say you don't realize how poor you were, right? But everything was always provided for. For me, always had a roof over my head, a warm meal ready to go, and a loving mom, and a loving dad as well. That always provided for me. Grew up though, riding bike everywhere. I think I was always. Racing was always important to me, whether it be running somewhere or riding my bike somewhere. For some reason, I always had this challenge of like, how fast can I get there, or racing my buddies to be the first one there. Friends would probably tell you stories that, they'd bet me that I couldn't run or ride to here and back in a certain amount of time. And I'd always take the bet and try and beat them. But yeah, rode our bikes everywhere, played softball in the neighborhood and baseball and whatever else we could, find to do, that was, cheap entertainment for us throughout every summer and through school. Mm-hmm. And, then in high school, typical I'd say typical childhood for me. Played like elementary basketball, played some basketball all through high school until my senior year. Dabbled in junior high football for a little while. I decided football wasn't for me when I was bulking up to like 118 pounds. When I was going to have to move up and start playing like JV, in varsity football. And some guys told me about cross country, and I had no idea what cross country was. And they told me it was running, a certain distance as fast as you could. And I was like, wow, that kind of connected with me. And so I jumped over, started running cross country and track and field growing up, and that was it. Yeah, life is little dial up.
And Defib, let's hear about little Defib and your journey through those phases.
Yeah, sure. Well, it was a cold, rainy day, 1960. No, I'm just kidding.
Middle of a snowstorm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in a different area. So the area I grew up in is called the Wyoming Valley. So it's about an hour, mostly north, a little east of Danville, right along Route Interstate 81, kind of that area. The Susquehanna River goes up through there as well. So my first 13 years in a little borough called Luzerne. And then when I was 13, we moved to Kingston, the thriving metropolis of Kingston, which is right on the Susquehanna River, directly across from Wilkes-Barre. If anybody doesn't know where Wilkes-Barre is, it's just a little bit south. Wilkes-Barre. It's a little bit south of Scranton, which is where Joe Biden's from, and the show The Office made famous. Anyway, that area is unique because it's what we call the coal region. So there's a vein of anthracite coal that runs from Scranton down to about Pottsville. Actually runs near Danville through towns called Mount Carmel and Shamokin. But it's the unique culture because people came from what they called the old country, whether it was Ireland or Italy or Lithuania or Poland or whatever, to work in the coal mines. And they would put people from the same countries and the coal companies would house them. And so it was very ethnic, but it ended up being a very rough kind of culture, a hard drinking, power drinking. People brag about how much they drink kind of culture, and just fighting. I mean, I think I was in 6 fist fights before I got to elementary school. And I don't know how different that is from other places, but I was 5-1. Yeah, I lost the first one in second grade. Getting in fights with my cousin and biting his finger, that doesn't count, that kind of stuff. But real fist fights, so when I was in elementary school, we had the stereotypical bully, all right? If you see a movie with a kid that's a bully on the playground, all right, this guy, he got held back in second grade, so he was older than us. And he had a name. His name was Buster, okay? So Buster was the first guy to beat me up. So I wasn't even supposed to fight him. My buddy, who's sitting next to him at the end of school, he says, "Hey, I'm going to fight Buster after school. Can you help me?" And Buster said, "Yeah, you could help him if you want." Like, I stood there, just kept getting punched. Anyway, I won the rest after that. But it was just one of those cultures where you had if you didn't stand up for yourself, you were going to get run over. Gotten more fights in high school, and after that, bar fights. I mean, this is the kind of culture it was.
Wow.
So anyway, I mean, I didn't know any better. That's just the way we lived. I in contrast, I asked my kids when I think they were in college or just out of college. I said, I don't ever you guys getting in a fight or even hear about a fight. My son never even knew about a fight growing up, and my daughter knew of one. It was 2 girls that got in a fight in Danville. So I'm really glad my kids grew up here. Great town for them to grow up in. It was just a totally different culture from where I grew up. So growing up, I wanted to emulate my dad, right? My mom and dad stayed together. They're still married. My mom, unfortunately, has dementia really bad, and she's in a nursing home. But my dad's 81. But he still goes to the gym once or twice a day and stuff like that. But he would brag about and tell us stories about playing basketball in high school. So funny, Carr, you'll like this. So he was the point guard on his high school basketball team, Luzerne High School. So Luzerne High School had a graduating class, he told me, of 28 people. So it's a small school. Now back then, I don't know how it is in other states, but back then they didn't have different classes. So now they have single A, double A, triple A, quad A, 5A. But back then they didn't have that. So the big schools played the small schools, that kind of thing. And so his senior year, they made it to the Final Four of the state championship. And so all I did is hear about that growing up, and he was the point guard, right? So I wanted to be the point guard on our high school basketball team. So that was my goal. And I was not a good athlete. I was small. I grew in between 9th and 10th grade. I grew from like 5'7" or something like that to 6'1". I've lost an inch since then somehow, but anyway, grew up a lot. But I worked my tail off. I was small and slow, and skinny. I was not born with a lot of muscle either. Oh, those are listening can't see this. Dial-Up's holding up my yearbook photo. All right, that looks nothing like I looked.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
my mom did my hair. My hair was always curly, just naturally curly.
I hope we have listeners out there that are watching this video. Hold on, wait. It gets better. It gets better. Hold on.
Watch on YouTube.
Oh Lord, that's what I look like. That's more what I look like. There. Number 24,
There he is,
baby.
the basketball player.
The Spartans.
Hold on, let's take a look at his shooting form.
Oh my Lord. Well,
Did you become a point guard?
Yeah, I'll tell you. A funny card. You got to see the shooting form if he's going to hold up the picture. I think he's going to hold up.
The only thing is, look at your legs. Look, your feet. Look
check
really
out that follow through, man.
Though. Like, look at your feet down here.
Well, they're size 10, so take that for what it's worth.
I don't know what it is.
How's the old
your legs look
the Larry Bird
something.
Converse high tops?
Yeah.
Do you like those? Yeah.
Yeah, I wore those.
Yeah.
Quality.
So anyway, so I worked my butt off, right? They put a basketball court next to my grandmother's house, which is right down the road from my house, and I'm the guy who went and shoveled the snow off the court so I could practice, and I just practice all the time. And I got fortunate enough, there were enough kids in our neighborhood who eventually would show up in the evenings when it was nice out to play, but I got to play against older kids, and so finally. You know, my senior year in high school, I was named co-captain of the team and starting point guard on the varsity team. So, and that was a quad A school. So we had our graduating class was like 450 compared to my dad. So, anyway, I mean, I was not a great athlete, but I was a pretty good basketball player for our area. You know, we weren't inner city or anything like that, and we had a good team. We won a trophy my senior year. So.
He was I'm
anyway,
a lot like you. I grew up loving the sport. Is Homesdale near y'all?
Where's Homesdale?
That's
Pennsylvania, the mountains.
Is that down by Schuylkill County?
I don't think. I think that.
I went to a
FAFSA
basketball camp in Homesdale. I don't know. I just knew it was in Pennsylvania.
Oh, Homesdale. That's in the Poconos, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that part of the Poconos?
Yeah.
Was that the Pocono Invitational basketball camp?
It was a 5-star basketball camp.
5-star, yep.
Yeah. So
I went to the Pocono Invitational up there. My buddy went to 5-star. I wasn't a star. I couldn't go to 5-star.
Well, I sort of got in through the back door, so I wasn't a star either. But let's go because we want to make sure we have enough time to cover a few things. And one of those is why we're here, how this High Impact Man podcast started. Because, I think other guys would agree.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have made a big difference, I think, in F3, having guys share their stories. And, some of the stories you hear these guys go through, it's just amazing what they've overcome.
Yeah.
In their lives. And sometimes I'm just like shaking the head going, amazed about what they've been through in their journey. And,
absolutely.
Each story's different and each episode you learn from. So first of all, I just want to thank you guys for taking the time every Monday. I think you do 2 interviews every Monday. You have to put it together. I just want to thank y'all for putting this podcast together because you are making a difference. So let's talk about a little bit how this got started.
Yeah, sure. I'll take that one. Funny enough, my wife, who EH'd me into F3, she's a nurse and she was doing a contract job. So she's traveling now. She had to leave Danville, drive down to, I forget where she was going at the time, Carlisle or somewhere south of here, a little over an hour. And I didn't even know she was listening to podcasts. I wasn't listening to any podcasts. And she called me on the road and she said, "Hey, I think you need to start a podcast." I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "I listened to podcasts and I think you'd be really good at it. You should start a podcast." I said, "You want me to just start a podcast? I don't even know what the heck that is." I mean, I've heard of them. So I started listening to podcasts and I floated the idea. I Dial Up. I don't know if I told you about it first or who I told first, but I put it out there to the PAX. I was like, "Hey, my wife thinks that we should start a podcast." And I didn't even know what, it didn't have to be about F3. It was just a podcast. And so I started thinking about it and I thought, well, I came up with the idea of just bringing men on to tell their stories because every man has a story.
Yeah.
And I think that's the human interest part of things, and it's the real reason, right? It's the real reason why we do F3 is to the fellowship and getting to know guys and be inspired by guys and becoming better leaders through it. And so I thought, well, this could be our mission, but I still wasn't sold on it. We were at Cafeteria after a Saturday beatdown. We go to Perkins for breakfast, and I still wasn't, I still wasn't committed to doing it. And Spielberg was there, and Spielberg, a lot of guys heard of Spielberg. He's a tech guy, right? He for a hobby, he was doing different editing thing and photo or video stuff and things like that. And I said, yeah, I don't know, if we should do that. And he said, oh, no, we're doing it. And he was like, we're doing it. And so I asked Dial Up to come and join me, and the rest is history. We came up with a mission statement for the podcast, and we, for the most part, stuck to it, bringing guys on to tell their stories.
Yeah, I'll fill some gaps here. You did mention it to me before you mentioned it to the rest of the packs, and you're like, hey, would you do this? And I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
My thought in my head at that point was like, there's no way this is going to happen. Defib, doing a podcast, the technical stuff that needs to happen. Right. I don't know what I need to do for that, so I'm not volunteering for it. So I thought, yeah, sure, I'll do it, because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking it ain't going to happen. And Spielberg, that one Cafeteria, yeah, you mentioned it, and he's like, yeah, let's do it. The next thing you know, he's like texting us with the equipment we needed, and like had the website set up. Like, yeah, we were off and running. Like it happened like within like literally weeks, right? From when you put the idea out there, and Spielberg had us up and going.
Right, it didn't take long at all.
Because in the nation, we have the COT with Hello Kitty and Rapido.
Mm-hmm.
We have Stuff Worth Trying with Italian Job and
Tommy
Boy.
Mm-hmm.
And then Bones. What's the name of the Bones podcast?
Hunt for Wellness.
Yeah, Hunt for Wellness. And then, Dark Helmet and Dread used to have their different ones going on. But so how did you get approached where you became an official podcast of F3 Nation? What was involved with that?
Well, it was this past summer, actually. So we are coming up on 3 full years of podcasts. When is that? February or March? I can't remember. But anyway,
February, I think.
Yeah. So we have been doing it for a while, and I got asked, I think 2 different times. I don't remember if it was Kitty or Dark Helmet who said, "Hey, would you guys be interested in being part of the F3 podcast?" And or would you consider it? And I responded, "Yeah, we'd consider it." And then I never heard from them again. And then, so I just thought, well, they don't want us, or I don't know. I have no idea. And then, and obviously most of our listeners end up being F3 guys anyway. But this summer at the Pennsylvania Convergence, so the Keystone Convergence, which we have every year in Harrisburg, Dark Helmet was our guest speaker, so he was there. So Friday night we had just a dinner, kind of get to know each other kind of thing before with the overnight ruck and then the beatdown Saturday and stuff. And Dark Helmet came up to me. He said, we need the High Impact Man podcast as part of F3 podcast. I said, okay. Yeah, I don't think that would be a problem. Tell me, what we got to do and stuff, and I'll talk to Dial Up and Spielberg about it. And he said, and I need you to kind of lead this thing, these F3 podcasts. So I'm like, really? Well, all right. I don't know what is all involved with that, but I'll do my best. So that's what happened. And so I'm really happy that happened. It's great to get to know Italian Job and Tommy Boy and Dark Helmet and Bones a little bit better. But we're going through some I don't know about changes, but we're kind of, we keep talking about things. It's really hard to get everybody together.
Right.
That's one thing I discovered is it's just so hard to get everybody together at one time to talk. It's like herding cats with these guys, right?
You have not lived life until you've been part of one of the text strings with Defib and Tommy Boy and Dark Helmet and
Kitty.
Rapido,
yeah.
And Kitty.
And Rapido, yeah.
One text starts it and you have no idea where it's going to go.
Well, I know when I'm in my car every week, that's my entertainment. I mean, I listen to all these.
Well, so what we're going to do is, I'm glad you asked that. So I don't know how people are going to listen to this, but you mentioned Dread and Dark Helmet having a podcast before. Well, they're doing another one. And so I think they're going to call it Minivan Centurion, which he did before, but this is going to, I think what they're going to do is their goal is to do a podcast that focuses on the culture of F3. And so they were going to try to record, I think, last week or a week and a half ago or something like that. And they ran into some technical difficulties because Dredd was on vacation and he couldn't get internet back. Anyway, that's coming. So all you podcast listeners out there in F3 Nation, it's going to be great, right? I mean, hearing from Dark Helmet is always great. Dredd, obviously, he and OBT started this thing. He's an icon. He doesn't hold back. He's a truth teller, and he's a motivator, and so that's coming. I don't know when they're going to be able to record because we're over the holidays now, so everyone's kind of gotten a break from talking to each other for the moment. Bones, he's struggling to get content, so we're gonna, I'm trying to get together with Bones to talk to him about it and what we could do. But Bones has a part in the COT podcast where he does his Hunt for Wellness segment.
I've been on Bones. I've been on him 2 times because I think he was having people repeat because it's been several years and your listeners change.
Right.
So
we have a couple options for him, whatever he wants to do. But there's that, and then the stuff we're trying, guys. They're putting out content when they can. It's hard. Everyone's got lives, and this is I don't want to say it's a hobby because it's a work, a labor of love. But guys are busy. They're in a different phase of life than Dial Up and I are. Okay, we're older. Our kids are older. They got young kids that require time. Which is good. They're prioritizing things. Not to say that they're not going to continue. They are, but there's that. And the COT podcast, I mean, they're just awesome. Kitty's a professional, and Rapido's awesome, and they I think they're going to go to every other week. They were doing weekly, and again, it's hard. It's hard to put a podcast out every week.
Yeah, I think every 2 weeks, even for some of these once a month. It's just you're doing something. As I've shared, I manage a F3 LinkedIn page, so I always try to put all these podcasts, the video ones, on LinkedIn so guys can also see it too. And I'll take this opportunity to make a commercial. If you're on LinkedIn, if you're not in an F3 group, we're there, and please sign up because it's a lot of guys have been posting this group. It's a great way to network. We've had guys looking for jobs through our page, looking for opportunities. So there's my plug. While I have the opportunity, guys, we could. There's so much we could cover with you too. You talked about the Keystone Convergence and how you started that and bringing the whole state of Pennsylvania together once a year. But we are running up on time, and I want to get to the 2 questions that y'all ask every listener. Mm-hmm. And the first question will go Dial Up and then Defib, and the second question will go Defib and Dial Up. Mm-hmm. So the first question is, Dial Up, who is your hero inspiration?
Yeah, so I'm gonna cop out this time because I answered this the last time and picked one person, but I'm gonna cop out this time and take a little different approach and say I have been blessed to have mentors and heroes dotted throughout my life when I've needed them the most, and each of them brought something different to my life to help me make me who I am today. So I won't say it's just one person, but I'll certainly share a few. One is somebody who I never actually got to meet. It was my grandfather on my mom's side who passed away literally about 2 months before I was born. And even though I never met him, growing up as a young kid and seeing my mom's work ethic to provide for me, and hearing the stories of how my grandfather worked so hard, whether it be helping dig a reservoir by hand with a pickaxe, or digging graves in a cemetery by hand at night after working, full-time job in like this quarry. Just hearing how hard he worked to provide for his family provided a lot of inspiration for me growing up about just hard work and providing for my family whenever it was time for me to get married and have a family. After that, I would say probably the next biggest role model for me and hero for me was my wife's father. Because even though I always felt this presence of God. I could never pinpoint like what it was, but like I always felt that like God was real. He was active in my life. He cared about me, and like there was just this presence there. But I never really knew like what it was. But I look back now and it's like, man, God was with me this whole time, just waiting for me to accept him into my life and let him lead me. And where I started to recognize it was when I married my wife, and I got to become part of her family, and her dad showed me what a godly man truly was, and just taught me so much about serving God, loving God, having that personal relationship with him, tithing, getting into the word, and basically living out what we're called to do in Scripture. So he was probably the next big hero for me, and kind of from that time on, I'll kind of stop with those two and not keep going through my entire life. But those are two key ones. I'll say my good brother here, Defib, like he's an inspiration and a hero to me. Means a lot to me. His friendship. I know he's one of those guys that if I needed someone in the middle of the night, I could call him and he would be there, along with a couple other guys from our pack. So I'll stop there.
Defib,
Wow.
you're a hero, your inspiration.
Yeah, Dial Up. Thanks, man. I feel the same way with you, brother. But I'm gonna say first of all, I'm gonna give you two, because one is Jesus. Okay, I know that's a Sunday school answer, but I grew up Catholic, and there's nothing wrong with being Catholic, except I never really gave my life to the Lord. I just knew that he was a son of God. He died for my sins, and he rose from the dead. But until I read Scripture for myself, and that's a story in and of itself. But I read, God got a hold of me. He said, read this, and I just started reading. Page 1, Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and I read through the Bible in, I don't know, probably 4 months or something like that. But in the Old Testament is where I gave my life to the Lord, because there's a difference between knowing who Jesus is and submitting to him, right? And I'm reading in the Old Testament, God's just wiping people out because of sin. And I realized that God's serious. He's serious about sin. But he loves us so much that he sent his son to die for us, so that we don't have to receive the punishment that we deserve. And I was in the hospital at like 1 a.m. in a call room. And I dropped to my knees and I gave my life to the Lord then. And he really did change me. You become a new creature in Christ. 100% true. Like the stuff you listen to, you don't feel the same about. It doesn't mean you stop sinning. I hopefully sin less, but I know I sin, and I'm remorseful about it. So, and that's part of an ongoing repentance. But anyway, that's if I didn't come to know the Lord, I don't know how. I know my marriage wouldn't be as good as it is. I know I wouldn't be as good as a father as I am. I know I wouldn't be as good as a friend as I am. I know that I wouldn't be able to lead other men in whatever way I've been able to do that. So Jesus, number one. The second one, I would say, the guy who's not divine would be George Washington. I really admire the way George Washington did things. I mean, he was always about getting better. He pushed himself hard to read a lot, and he was pretty big for his time. I think he was like 6'3", but worked on being healthy and fit, and he wanted to lead men and stuff like that. He was ambitious, yes, but he at the end of the Revolution, he could have been the first King George of the United States if he wanted to be, because the Continental Congress had no power. He ran the army, and the army loved him. His officers loved him. They wanted to march on the Continental Congress and demand things. And Washington gave a speech kind of famous for talking his officers down. And he went to Congress. He handed over his sword. He went back to his farm. And then when they needed help with the Constitutional Convention, they asked him to come and lead that, because they couldn't get along. So he was the president of the Constitutional Convention. And then they created the Constitution, and they elected him the first president of the United States. And he could have been president of the United States until he died if he wanted to be. But after 2 terms, he stepped down from that, went back to his farm. Unfortunately, he died younger than he needed to because we didn't have antibiotics back then, but because he got sick. But I mean, that's incredible humility, if you think about it. And I know that when at the end of the war, when he went back to his farm, and there's a famous guy in Roman history named Cincinnatus who did that. If anybody wants to look it up, look up the history of Cincinnatus, because he was a farmer who got called to lead Rome against whoever it was and conquered the bad guys, and he could have set himself up as emperor, but he went back to his farm too. Cincinnati, Ohio is named after him, by the way. But yeah, George Washington showing such humility, when he had the power to do whatever he wanted to. And I think when King George III heard about that, he couldn't believe it. And he said, if that's true, George Washington is the greatest man who ever lived. So I don't know if he's the greatest man who ever lived, but I got a picture of Washington. There's a famous, I don't know how famous it is, but picture of him kneeling, praying next to his horse on a snowy ground during the Revolution. And there's a snippet that comes with that painting from the farmer who witnessed it and heard him praying. And so anyway, that hangs in my office. I got kicked out of my office. I'm in the storage area.
Yep.
My wife says I can't have all these wires and microphones in
why'd you,
first room people see when they walk in.
That's why you got kicked out.
Yeah, because people walk in the front door. That's the first room they see, and it's like it didn't look nice enough. So,
Well, before I do the final question, I just want to thank y'all for letting us turn the table. I think it's great the guys to hear from you. And, I always tell guys, to me, the greatest benefit of F3 are the friendships we make. I think most of us, we probably wouldn't have been friends with 98% of the guys we work out with if it wasn't for F3. And these guys become a big part of our lives. And I feel the same about you two. I think we met at GTE 44. Yep. We were underneath the log together, and Defib was sort of trying to do a story about us. And then
he banned us in the middle of the night.
Yeah, and then you came after Hampton Roads this past spring and worked out with us.
I should be down again.
And then Defib, my daughter, has 7 more months to go in PA school.
Sweet.
So, and I appreciate some of the advice you've given me for that. So I just want to thank you all for, again, what you've done for your friendships. And so before we leave, this is your chance, even though you probably have this chance every week.
Yeah.
But to ask you, what is your message for the men of America? And Defib, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you. I swear I didn't even get this thought, pre-thought, right? I just gonna be off the cuff. So if you ask me tomorrow, I might give you a similar message, but add something to it. Anyway, my message to men of America is don't stop trying to improve yourself, and don't do it alone. And that's what F3 is all about, right? So if you have a life where you're constantly trying to get better, all right, the standard is perfection. Jesus said, be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. We can't do that. We can't be perfect, but that doesn't mean we should stop trying to reach that goal. We don't lower the standards, and we should, in our lives, we should be constant learners. We should always be trying to improve ourselves from a relational aspect in all 3 F's. And so just keep trying to get better, and don't do it alone. There's so many guys out there that suffer, and they suffer alone, and trust me, whatever guys listening out there, if you're going through something, there's other men that have gone through it. They're not going to have the same exact experience as you, but they've gone through something similar, and or something that could relate to it. And I tell you a quick story. We talked about this in the podcast we recorded right before this, so I don't know if it's going to air before this one or after it. But anyway, a couple of days ago, my daughter got contacted by a guy that she didn't know that well. But anyway, this guy moved out to Pittsburgh to be with a girlfriend, and he has no family, bad family life, no family contact whatsoever. And he is an ex-Marine, and I don't know if he has PTSD or what, but he struggles with something that happened when he was a Marine. And now he and his girlfriend broke up, and he's in Pittsburgh, and he's all alone. And he sent a picture that suggested suicide, and or alluded to it. And my daughter's texting him, and he said he's at rock bottom and stuff like that. And my daughter says, he's out in Pittsburgh. She says, Dad, is there an F3 group out there? And so I said, yeah. And I got a hold of Maxime, and he's a sector Q for the Northeast. Yep. He's out in Pittsburgh. He's a leader, and he says, send me his contact information. So all I did was send Maxime the guy's contact information. A little while later, I get a text from Maxime. He says, yeah, I spoke to him. He's going to show up tomorrow morning, which was a Saturday morning at the beatdown. And then I got a text from Maxime later that day saying that he showed up and he met the guys there and stuff like that. So he's at least attended one F3 beatdown. But I mean, this is the kind of stuff that happens with F3, right? My daughter recognized the value of F3 and how guys need guys, and she had the heart for this guy who she doesn't know real well, but and she asked me to like see if I could hook him up here. And Maxime, without hesitation, gets a hold of the man. Whatever he said to him, he got him to show up. So don't go through life alone, and keep working to get better no matter what obstacle you face. Keep trying to get better.
Thank you, brother. All right, Dial Up, what's your message to the men of America?
Yeah, I think it kind of parallels what Defib said, and for me, it's I would say invest in relationships and experiences instead of earthly possessions. Get to know those guys around you, and ladies, your kids, like whoever it is, anybody that's around you, right? But for us, it's guys, right? Is what we really focus on in F3. But get to know these guys, and don't accept the response of, hey man, how you doing? I'm doing fine. Don't just accept that quick, easy answer. Like, get to know them well enough that when they're lying to you when they say I'm doing fine. There's stuff going on, and you can help them, and quite frankly, they can help you at times as well. So invest in those relationships so that you're getting to know guys, and you can be there to support them and help them through life. Be that friend that someone can call in the middle of the night when they've got a problem. I have a few friends that have pulled me in through some muddy and dark times in their lives, and wow, it's tough to see them going through it. It's important to know that you can be there for them, and that you've helped them, and it's nothing pleasurable a lot of times, but we should strive to be that guy that a lot of folks will call and reach out to when they need some help to help them get through life. And then the experiences part, everything gets left here at the end of life, on this earth. Yeah, we might will it to our kids or other family members, like whoever it goes to, but don't leave life wishing I would have tried this and tried to do that. Like, if you ask me about life and like what are the most what's the most memorable times in your life, so like your greatest times in your life, it has nothing to do with acquiring some type of possession or owning something or doing something. It's moments. It's activities and events that are in your mind, that are untangible physically, but are in your mind that just bring a smile to your face, and you just think back to like, man, that was awesome that we did that, or awesome that we did this other thing. Like, so to me, those are my words.
Both great messages, guys. Thank you for letting us flip the script. For the guys listening, if you haven't been on, we all have a story to share. So please reach out to Defib and Dial Up and share your story. And all I know is tonight we heard from two high impact men. So guys, thank you for everything you do for F3 Nation.
Yeah, thanks, Funny Car.
Hey,
Happy New Year. Hey, Dial Up, if we ever retire, I think I know the guy who could take over this
how
podcast.
About it? And Funny Car, we've said this at the end of a lot of our podcasts, but it is truly a blessing for us to get to talk to these guys each and every week. It's work, and every once in a while it's like, oh man, I wish I didn't have to record this, but I can tell you there's not a single recording that by the end of it's kind of like a workout, right? Have you ever went to a workout and whenever it was over, you regretted going? Every time you show up for a workout, it might have just sucked to get started and you did not want to go. But once you go, it's like, wow, I'm so glad that I went. We have that occasionally. I'm sure Defib feels the same way. It's like, crap, got to record a podcast tonight. But I can tell you, we've never ended one and regretted doing it or felt like, man, I wish we wouldn't have done this. Like every time we wrap up feeling inspired and encouraged and humbled a lot of times at, the stories that are out there of what guys are going through in their lives, and so many stories of just, inspiration. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, right?
And I think it'd be hard. And I wasn't going to ask. I thought about asking this, and I said it'd be hard for y'all to pick out a few that stand out besides mine. but I just know that'd be a tough thing for you to do because each one is like that. So.
Yeah, we've had so many guys on that have overcome so many things, and not only overcome them, but gone on to do some amazing things. And I'm convicted by so many guys of what they've done and what they've sacrificed and the people that they're helping. It's like, man, I'm nothing compared to these guys. So yeah, it's been very, very rewarding and as Dial Up said, is a blessing for us to do it.
Well, keep doing it because it's making an impact, and I really enjoyed spending some time with y'all both tonight. So thank you.
Yeah,
you got it, brother. God bless you.
See you in March.
Thank
I
you.
should be coming down to William and Mary again.
All right, we're ready for you,
brother.
We'll get Pellegrino out there.
Yeah,
too.
I want to. Yeah, I got a whole bunch of guys we met from down there now.
Right.
All right, guys. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Stop the recording here.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I would like to thank our guests for joining us and sharing their story of becoming a high-impact man. More information and resources can be found at highimpactman.com. If you like this podcast, please consider following us on our social media pages or email us at him@highimpactman.com. That is HIM@highimpactman.com. The High Impact Man podcast has a new episode every week, and you can find them on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Google Podcast platforms. Have a great week, everyone.